One day they are there, the next day they are gone. No argument, no dramatic confrontation, no final ultimatum, just silence. And if you have ever been on the receiving end of it, you know how disorienting that silence is, because there was no warning, no blow-up, no moment where they said, "This is the last time." They just disappeared, completely, without explanation. And if you have ever been the one who did it, you also know something. That it was not impulsive, that it was not dramatic, that by the time you walked away, something inside you had already been decided for a long time. Psychologists have a name for this pattern. They call it the door slam. And it is one of the most misunderstood emotional responses in the entire field of personality psychology. Here is what most people assume when someone cuts contact suddenly: that the person is cruel, cold, immature, running from conflict they were too cowardly to have. That assumption is almost always wrong, because the door slam is not an avoidance of conflict. It is the end result of a conflict that was happening for months, sometimes years, entirely internally. While the other person saw nothing unusual, the door slammer was quietly running a process, tracking, observing, weighing, giving chances they never announced they were giving, hoping for change that never came, and at some point the calculation completed. Not because of one incident, but because one incident finally confirmed what they already knew. That threshold was crossed, the door closed, and it closed from the inside. To understand why this happens, you have to understand the specific psychology of the people it happens to. Research on personality structure consistently shows that certain individuals have an unusually high capacity for absorbing emotional pain before they show any outward sign of distress. They do not cry in arguments. They do not raise their voice. They do not issue warnings. They process internally. And because they process internally, people around them often misread their tolerance as approval, their silence as agreement, their continued presence as evidence that everything is fine. It is not fine. It has not been fine for a long time. But because their distress is invisible, the people causing it have no feedback mechanism, no alarm going off, no signal that something is accumulating, so it accumulates, slowly, quietly, without anyone noticing, until the accumulation reaches a threshold that, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. Psychologist John Gottman spent decades researching what he called the 4 horsemen of relationship deterioration. His most counterintuitive finding was not about conflict. It was about what happens in the absence of visible conflict. He identified a pattern he called stonewalling, where a person shuts down emotionally during interaction. But more relevant to the door slam is what his research revealed about contempt and the erosion of repair attempts. In relationships heading toward permanent rupture, one of the most reliable predictors is not the presence of conflict. It is the failure of repair. Every relationship has moments of rupture. The question is whether both people attempt to repair them. In the door slam pattern, what is happening in the final stages is not that the person stopped caring. It is that they stopped believing repair was possible. They had made repair attempts, quietly, in ways the other person may not have recognized as attempts at all. A comment about how something made them feel. A request stated once, gently, and then not repeated. A moment of vulnerability that was met with dismissal. And when those attempts consistently went nowhere, something shifted. Not in emotion, in belief. The belief that this person is capable of giving me what I need here. When that belief dies, the relationship dies with it. The door slam is just the formal announcement. There is also a neurological dimension to this that rarely gets discussed. Research on emotional processing in highly sensitive individuals shows that people who score high on what psychologists call harm avoidance tend to have a specific relationship with interpersonal pain. They feel it deeply. They process it slowly and thoroughly, and they are extremely reluctant to expose themselves to the same source of pain more than once. This is not emotional fragility. It is the opposite. It is a nervous system that has already done the full analysis. That has already felt the full weight of what this relationship costs. And that has reached a conclusion based on pattern recognition rather than impulse. The door slam feels sudden from the outside because it was invisible from the outside. But from the inside, it is the quietest possible ending to a very long internal process. Here is where it gets more specific. The people most likely to door slam are not the people who blow up at every boundary violation. They are the people who say almost nothing when a boundary is violated. That combination, deep feeling paired with minimal external expression, is precisely what creates the conditions for the door slam, because they absorb and absorb and absorb without signalling how much they are absorbing. And because they do not signal, the other person has no opportunity to correct, which means the violations continue, which means the absorption continues, which means the internal accounting continues until the account is full, and then it closes permanently. What makes the door slam so hard for the other person to understand is not just the absence of warning, it is the permanence. Most emotional responses have a resolution built in. An argument ends. An ultimatum gets a response. Even a breakup comes with a conversation. But the door slam has no resolution built in, because the person who closed the door is not waiting for an apology. They are not waiting for an explanation. They are not waiting for anything. The decision was made internally, and it is complete. And this is where the psychology gets genuinely complicated. Because from the outside, this looks like cruelty. It looks like withholding resolution from someone who needs it. It looks like punishment. But from the inside, it is none of those things. It is self-preservation. The door slammer is not withholding resolution. They have already resolved it. Internally, completely, without the other person's participation. Because after enough experience of having their processing dismissed or dismissed again, they stopped believing that external resolution would match the internal one they had already reached. It is not that they do not think you deserve an explanation. It is that they no longer believe the explanation would land. Research on rejection sensitivity and attachment theory adds another layer. People with certain attachment histories, particularly those who learned early that expressing needs was met with dismissal or punishment, often develop a two-phase response to boundary violations. Phase 1 is extended tolerance. They absorb far more than they should because vulnerability feels dangerous. Saying this hurts me feels like handing someone a weapon. Phase 2, when it finally comes, is total withdrawal. Because once the decision is made, partial withdrawal feels like continued exposure to the thing they have already decided to protect themselves from. All or nothing, not because they are dramatic, but because the middle ground was never safe to begin with. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes with being someone who door slams, because you feel things very deeply. You gave that relationship more than people around you knew. You absorbed more, processed more, hoped more than you ever showed. And when you finally walked away, it was not because you stopped caring. It was because you cared too much for too long with too little returned. But from the outside, it looks like coldness. People call you ruthless. They say you shut down. They say you are incapable of working through things. And you know that none of that is accurate. You worked through it, alone, silently, for longer than anyone realized. That is not an inability to process. That is a very thorough, very private kind of processing that most people never see. So here is what this pattern is actually revealing. The door slam is not a character flaw, it is information. It is telling you that this person's capacity for quiet tolerance is finite, that their silence was not acceptance, that they have a threshold, and when it is crossed, the crossing is permanent. For the person on the receiving end, the lesson is hard. The moment you are most confused was not the moment the relationship ended. The relationship ended long before you noticed. Every small repair attempt you missed, every boundary crossing you did not register, every moment of quiet pain you mistook for quiet contentment. Those were the moments that mattered. And for the person who does the door slamming, the recognition is different. Your capacity to absorb is not evidence of strength. Your silence is not protecting anyone. The pattern works against you because it denies the other person the chance to see what they are doing before it is too late. Not because you owe them that, but because the people who actually deserve to stay sometimes do not get the chance. The door slam is real. The pain that leads to it is real. The permanence that follows it is real. And understanding it does not make it easier, but it does make it less mysterious. Some people process pain loudly, in real time, in front of you, and some people process it entirely alone, in private, over months. Neither is wrong. Both carry costs. But the person who processes alone carries a specific cost that most people never see. They grieve the relationship long before they leave it. By the time the door closes, they have already said goodbye. Quietly, to themselves, when no one was watching. So here is what I want to ask you. Drop it in the comments. Have you ever been door slammed and never understood why? Or are you someone who realised, reading this, that you have done it more than once? There is no wrong answer. Both experiences are worth talking about. If this gave you words for something you have felt but never been able to name, subscribe. There is more coming.